Hey, 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 Sporty King here. You there? Hey, hey, look, goodness to you. And I say goodness because I don't know whether you're watching morning, afternoon, or evening. But isn't it great to have good in front of your salutation? I'm going to get to say that again, but I like to say it right at the beginning because you could be watching a video, but that is also me coming on like 3 minutes before my actual start time for the broadcast. So I'll say it again when the broadcast starts, but I always like to come on a little early. I've decided to do it 2 to 3 minutes earlier to give the technology a chance to do what they call build the audience, let people know, hey, you can shut down your stuff. Sporty's about to be on. Stop the world. I want to get on, not off. Okay. So, because also, meanwhile, I'm broadcasting live on three mediums simultaneous. I'm using one called StreamYard, which allows me to broadcast, in this case, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube simultaneously. And I say in this case because depending on which package you buy, it increases the number of mediums that you can broadcast on. So don't think it's just for three. If you're, oh, well, I've got 5 or 6, because maybe you're also doing TikTok. I don't know if TikTok allows that, or Instagram. I don't know, but just thought of that. But anyway, that's what you want to do is check all that out. And I highly recommend StreamYard. It's been great. I haven't figured out yet. Man, I'm gonna have to try because I like to try new things on technology. We got less than 2 minutes for today's message. I want to figure out how to do it from Zoom because it seems to me, well, yeah, see with Zoom, like with this, I can't have transitions in my slides. So in Zoom, I'll be able to have transitions with share the screen type of stuff. I'll figure that out now that I put on my top of mind agenda. But let me know where you're viewing in from so I can give you a shout out. We got less than a minute today to go for today's message. So that's what I like to do to give the shout outs. This is my fun interactive day. And of course, it is a solemn day for us. But as you'll see in the message, I also remind us not to get caught up in solemnity. Woo, solemnity, whichever one it goes, but to be proud of, what we did to how our nation. I mean, man, we can almost not imagine what it's like to be in another country, but do you see all the things we get through in America? Man, it's something. But let me know where you're viewing in from, okay? Because you just made me think of another message I might decide to do with saying that. Just the things we take for granted that we have managed to get through, the way we got through 9/11, the way we got through the pandemic, and the way we're going to get through with this message now, because it is now 1 o'clock on the East Coast, and I'm going to go on and get this started. So welcome to Glue Wednesday. And I say goodness because I don't know whether you're watching morning, afternoon, or evening. And actually, okay, that's it. But isn't it good? Isn't it great to have good in front of your salutation? Look, somebody came on, gave me a love emoji, and then cut out, and I appreciate that. And then somebody said, hey, what's going on, Daphne? Good day to you. Great to see you, and welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. So, Glue Wednesday. I created it because old school rules. If this is your first time, and what happens is a lot of times back in the old days, we used to just say you work Monday to Friday and the weekend. And so they didn't have the term flex time, though there's always been flex time because you've always had hotels, public transportation, restaurant, that's the hospitality industry. So that was it. So they just said Wednesday was hump day, or the middle of the work week. Well, I decided to put a little twist on it. Wednesday is the middle of actually a traditional 7-day week, regardless of when you work. So I see Wednesday as the glue. It's the day that keeps the weekend and the week beginning together. So it's the glue. And then that put me in my favorite mode, the prayerful mode. And so I decided that glue is GLUE, God's love. I decided we don't need to hump. We need to find ways to keep it together. So GLUE is God's love undoes everything. And that's what Glue Wednesday is. It's the recognition that God's love will not will not tear what is good apart, but whatever has been torn apart, God's love will bring it back together. So throughout the broadcast, go on and let me know where you're coming in from, as well as leave your comments. All right. But today, I'm going to be continuing what I call a quick glue series. And where each of the messages will focus on one of the letters of the broadcast title, glue, GLUE. As we've done in the past, during each message, if you'd like to be one of my co authors of the next week's upcoming message, you can put a word beginning with the letter in the thread. Okay. So, Daphne, thanks for the welcome. Glad to see you. Oh, I appreciate you. Always, Daphne, always. You know it. All right. So, you can put, you won't do it yet. I'll tell you at the end of the broadcast which letter we're going to be using. I'll go and do a spoiler. We're going to, in case you can't stay on or choose not to, we're going to use the letter U next week, but don't put words in there. I like them all be at the end or together. And you could be thinking about what words you want to put in the thread as we go along, okay? But today's focus, so you're going to put the upcoming message, you're going to put a word beginning with that letter in the thread. So again, for next week's broadcast, you're going to put words beginning with the letter U, okay? Today's focus is on the letter L. My co-authors who submitted words beginning with the letter L are Victor Morris, who gave me listen, Rogercarole Rogers gave me languish, Ramona Hopkins gave me longevity, and Robert Ford gave me two. He gave me loss as well as lifting. And I'm going to be using for my guiding scripture Genesis 3, 9, and 11. And that is, but the Lord called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "Who told you you were naked?" Those are the two things that God said to Adam. Where are you? And who told you that you were naked? And I use those scriptures to create my message today, which is called, Where Were You? Where were you? And I'll start by using Rob Ford's his second word, okay? I'm sorry, his full quote that he sent me, and this quote was sent to me on email. And he said, the second word for me is lifting. One of the, I'm sorry, let me finish this sentence. I'm going to start by using Rob's full quote with his second word, because it's certainly part of my intent today to ask us all to flash back to where we were on when we heard or saw the news of the World Trade Center bombing. Where were you? And so here's what Rob had written to me. The second word for me is lifting. One of the strongest memories I have of those days is being at church on the Sunday following the attack. At the end of the service, instead of the usual hymns, the congregation was led in the singing of God Bless America. Everyone stayed standing, singing through the whole song, and several people had tears in their eyes. I felt so much love and togetherness at that moment. I knew we would get through the tragedy. I wish we could always have that feeling of togetherness without a tragedy. We all have more in common. Why do we seem to focus on what is different among us these days? And so I let us bring that back to the second of the two questions that God asked Adam. Who told you you were naked? And grant, as well as thank you, Rob, for being your wish. You are your wish. There's always the option to have that feeling of togetherness without a tragedy. Look at our co-authors, Rob, Victor, Rogercarole, Ramona, and in fact, you who receive and share this spirit get to, and most important, remember to block out the negativity that can languish and make us feel like we're having a bad day when it's actually only a bad moment. You see, we are never naked. We are never left uncovered by God. We are never naked. We are never left uncovered by God. We must learn to see loss as LOSS, a little obstacle to strengthen spirits. When I give my message during my speeches, I share that the biggest loss that I've experienced was when my mother died. In fact, I remember the first time I shared that with an audience. I wasn't planning on sharing it, and I just heard myself sharing it. And as I listened, I better understood what God was doing with me. He was showing me how to live with his will, not feeling naked. You see, I have no intention or need to get over my loss. And as I continue to live with it, I hear myself share that testimony smoother and smoother. And I assure you, you'll get through your next tragedy. So when I share the loss of my mother, I tell people that one of the first things that I thought of that came to my mind when my mother died was certain meals that I wasn't going to have again. And not that I equate my mother's life to a meal, but I think about what I took for granted about having a mother. And what we sometimes take for granted that we're going to get from certain people in our lives. But what I decided was rather than have that big hole in my life, I said, you know what? I'm not going to go through this life not having those meals that are like, I'm going to learn how to cook them. And so I would measure and figure out the ingredients, and then laugh and think about how she was just carried on and having a conversation and just looks like she was seasoning stuff, not paying attention, not measuring a thing. And it came out great. But when I did it, it just came out good. But check this out. Every time I did it, it came out better and better. Okay. And every time I did it, every time I cooked those meals that I was going to miss, I was in a ceremonial position and I brought my mother there with me. And so that's why I call her death a little obstacle, because when it first happened, it was the biggest thing going on in my life, right? Fred Sanford, oh, here's the big one, Elizabeth, here I come, here I come. It was the biggest thing. I didn't think I could go on without her. Haven't we had that thought? But as I started to cook and have that little ceremony, and each time I did it, it got better. And I brought her with me. I saw it as a little obstacle to strengthen my spirit. See, I learned how to make that meal without my mother. I didn't have to get over her being gone. I had to learn how to live with her being gone. And so that's why we have to see a loss as a little obstacle. It's just God redirecting us to say, hey, you can do this. You can handle the truth, right? You can do this, but you're just going to have to change your direction just a little. And that's what I say when I'm talking to my military audiences, especially because I'm talking to them about deployment or coming back and reintegration and the little changes they have to make in how they see their life. In deployment, well, they may think that they're going to be able to do such and such when they get to a certain place, and they may not know. So they have to find out. They can't be as prepared as they think they are to go to the deployment, because nobody knows what's going to happen. And when they come back, they can't just come back and jump back into their family lives. They have to rethink who they are, how they've gotten stronger, who their family is, and how it's gotten stronger. And so now there's a new like I say, there's a new sheriff in town. There's a new way of running the household. And one thing I always remind my soldiers, my military members and family members, when they come back, if they have children, it's so important to and this is a life lesson for everybody. Reconnect with every child, every important person in your life. Make sure you keep that relationship going for when it's not a group relationship. See, reconnect with each member who helped you through that deployment is what I say to them. And I say to you, everyone who you've been separated from, have a connection. Sometimes call to speak just to your niece, your nephew, your younger brother, sister, whoever, and don't speak to anybody else. Just call to speak to that person. What is the little thing that you and them share that makes them feel like an important part of your life? So that's what I talk to them about. And let me tell you, every time I heard myself talk about that loss, I got stronger and smoother. And I get to add it to apply it to different scenarios. But I want you to know that God knows that there are times when you want to ask him, where were you? I could have said, when my mother died, where were you, God? How come you didn't let my mother live? Why didn't you let her get the testimony and recover? That's not what I do, because the Lord's Prayer, as we learn it, as what I call four the hardest words in the Lord's Prayer, thy will be done. See, we learn it in rote, in like kingdom come, thy will be done, almost like a song. But thy will be done is a very hard thing to live. So sometimes we want to ask God, where were you? But remember what I said? God never leaves us naked. He will never be, well, there's no situation where he will not be by our side. And that's why last week, today, and actually every year, I always post that my belief that we should focus on the pride versus the anger of this day. Yes, it was one of those terrible days in our history. But again, did we just hear what we said? It's in our history. Little obstacles strengthen spirits. How can we be proud of what we went through, of some of the things, some of the people we know who performed heroic feats, and even some of them who lost their lives? Remember, was it two guys or two or three guys on one of the airplanes who, hey, made eye contact and decided to rush the terrorists, and that was, who knows how many lives they saved as they lost theirs. There were so many heroic things that happened that we can be proud of it. And I was like mumbling before this broadcast came on, just thinking about how in America, so many things that we've done, how we got past the pandemic, and then specifically how we got past this. When you think back to, the crises that have happened in our history, America, we get to celebrate some of those things. Some countries don't get to celebrate. They just get to not have it happen again. So, so it's really something. Let's be proud. I'm proud to be an American. I am. So, and I was on your way to your fourth grade class, and that's not that. Daphne's not a minor. She was teaching. Yeah, where were you? Where were you when you heard the news of 9/11? Even if you're watching the video, put that in the thread, okay? I was actually in Chicago at the time, and so I was also there for an hour behind, so I wasn't really awake. And someone called and said, "How is your family okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I, I talked to them a couple of days ago, whatever. And then they told me, I don't remember who. Then they told me about, what happened, and I was like, "Oh wow!" And so now, of course, I did go through, rushing and check and see with everybody. But yeah, that's where I was. I was in my bed sleep when it happened. Where were you? Oh my God. Oh, who was it? The Four Tops, maybe? I don't know. An old group, but when they talked about the blackouts in New York, they had a song called "Where Were You When the Lights Went Out" in New York City. See, there's another thing that we've overcome. I've been through two blackouts while I was in New York. One when I was too young to go outside, and the second time where I was older teenager. I was in my early 20s, 21 to 22. And so I went down to 42nd Street and directed traffic. So, we've got opportunities, ladies and gentlemen, to have great memories, to have sad memories or great memories. And why did I change it? Because I always like to put the con first and the pro second. I like the last thing that I said to be positive. That's just a practice that I try to keep. I don't do it every time, but I do it as often as possible, probably a good 99% of the time. And the times when I don't do it, I hear me not doing it and I do what I just did. I switch it up. So that really is what kind of gets me to the 100%. Okay. But again, let's focus on the pride versus the anger, because think about what was said in 2 Kings 6, uh, 17 through 20. Then Elisha prayed and said, "Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding Elisha. In other words, there are more of us than there are of them. There are more positive people in the world than there are negative. But you got to look around and see them. And if each of us would realize that we've all been through a tragedy and have another tragedy coming up, then add up those tragedies to recognize that there have always been more angels on our side than evil can handle. Evil can't beat the angels. We got so many more angels on our side than we have evil. And P.S., by the way, notice I didn't say angels and devils, angels and evil, because evil are also angels. Okay, what's going on, Rob? In the meeting at Punta Gorda. Okay, all right. So yeah, don't worry if you get to go back and see the video and throw your comments in there. But thank you. You got quoted in there, Rob. So thank you for what you dropped in. And it was so interesting. I said, oh my God, we're not friends on LinkedIn, and we converse there. And then I realized we converse sometimes on YouTube and through email. So that's why I'm glad we're now friends on there, my old high school buddy. But remember, there are always more angels on our side than evil can handle. And evil can't beat the angels. Just like I remember Pastor Bill Winston in Chicago. I never forgot this. I only went to this church twice, but that first time I went, I remember he said, if you're having a hard time choosing between good and evil, go to the back of the book. We always win. And that hasn't changed. The Bible has I'm going to look up how many versions of the Bible there are. But one thing that all of them have in common is at the back of the book, we always win. So I want you to remember that. And in other words, I said that. Okay. Therefore, we can appreciate the longevity of God's grace and master plan. You see, more important than Rob's profession, that we have so much more in common, is the number of us who join this team. So do your small part to make our numbers swell and strengthen. Therefore, I'll close with my own co-author word, love, Love. Let ourselves value everyone. And it's not that I value and love terrorists. I don't love terrorists. I value the people that God puts in my life to show me that I don't have to feel naked. Not only do I know where I am, I know whose I am. I don't have to feel like God doesn't have my back, that he leaves me uncovered. So I'll give you something to plant a seed of practice for staying and showing positivity. It's a twist in your vocabulary. Instead of saying, don't forget to lock the door, pick this up when you go out, say, remember to lock the door, pick this up. You know what I'm saying? Look, don't forget to call me. No. Don't forget to call me when you get home. No, remember to call me when you get home. Or instead of asking the store clerk, ask them, do you have? You don't have any dishwashing powder, do you? No. Do you have dishwashing powder? See, what you're doing is putting a positive twist on your vocabulary. And that practice of doing that will roll over to other statements in your life, and it'll help build a positive and a proactive vocabulary. So remember, remember to do things like that, because that's a name game that you play with your spirit that helps you stay positive, and then you'll be able to do what we're saying, and that is, celebrate the victory instead of the anger of days like today, because we still have more tragedies ahead coming up in our lives. So thanks again to my co-authors, Victor, Rogercarole, Ramona, and Rob. And if you'd like to be a co-author in next week's message, I'm going to be focusing on the letter U. So put words in the thread that begin with the letter U. I don't know what the message is yet, so don't worry about how your word lines up with the message. You're not in charge of the message. You are in charge of the words, and that guide me to be in charge of the message. So words that begin with you, even if you're watching the video, words that begin with you, as well as I'm now opening up. So I try to get my broadcast out because, I send it to certain people online who may not be an email rather, who may not be on social media. So that's what I do as well. So if you're one of those persons, you can put right in the email to me words that begin with you, and they'll be a part of my message next week. So there's Daphne with unique, and of course, Daphne, just like I gave you a flashback to being on your way to fourth grade class. Well, now you just gave me one for last week when you asked me what did I have ugly standing for? Ugly, unique, gifted, lovable you. But the unique, each one of us each one of us is unique. But what is it, that gift? What is that unique gift that you're giving to the world that helps people answer that question? Where were you? Where were you? Okay. And if you're receiving it through the email, so whatever you do, however you do it, just remember that you don't have to hump to get over. You have to keep finding ways to keep it together. And we find ways to keep it together right here on Glue Wednesday, each and every week, where God's love undoes everything. So thanks again for joining me, Rob and Daphne. It was good talking with y'all. And anybody else, when you put your comments in the thread, I'll end up sending you a comment. And next week we'll see what we have. And unique, I think that's a great place to start, because we all have to be reminded of the gifts. We hear the term the gifts and blessings. Well, these are the unique things that God does to help us recognize who we are. So when you look at our title for today's message, where were you? Well, where are you now? See, what's unique about what's going on in your life? What are you offering to the world? And you don't have to be a certain age to be offering that gift. You may be in charge of someone who's underage who could be offering a gift. There's so many ways to go and find positivity in our lives, y'all. So thank you for joining me this week. And let's keep finding positivity and making sure it works, because positive will always, always, always outdo the negative. And we've always had more angels on our side than evil can handle. I'm Sporty King, and this has been Glue Wednesday. Over and out. Peace.